First, I want to thank everyone for taking the time out to listen to our conversation today. My name is Bob Ruzicka. I'm the CDN manager at Ericsson. I want to take about 20 minutes to talk to you about what we're doing in the CDN space, and specifically around virtual reality and encoding and delivery of that content. There's a lot of obviously interesting changes taking place as it relates to VR. I'm not sure how much people know about Ericsson, $35 billion a year company. We've actually been in the CDN space delivering CDN solutions to telcos for about 5 years. We push probably 2.5, 3 terabits per second across our CDN networks today. And about a year ago, 6 months ago, we actually formally launched what we call our UDN technology, our newest CDN. It's trying to take the CDN market and turn it on its head. You know, traditional global CDNs tend to own the infrastructure all the way from the core to their edge, and then they dump content into the telco, and then from telco out to the consumer. We've actually started a whole new part of our business, which we call the UDN, which completely changes that. We actually own the core of the network across the globe, and then we partner with the global telcos to be our edge network. So what it means is our edge is the telco edge. And we actually rev share the revenue we create with the telcos. So they're incentivized to have a tight integration. So there's sort of 4 main value propositions to that. First, we get lower latency, 3 to 5 times the performance of global CDNs out there today. Because literally, instead of ending at your edge and then dumping into the telco and then to the consumer, we go straight from our core all the way to the edge. An example of that might be someone like a Telstra, who has 2 POPs for one of the global CDNs. But this past summer, there was a backup. They couldn't deliver all the content, and everything backfilled into Hong Kong from Australia. Well, now think about putting 8 locations across the Telstra network connected to the UDN. So you're deeper, and there's more volume capability there to handle. So lower latency, higher performance. The second piece of the UDN is analytics. So traditional CDNs, you get to the telco or the service provider, and it's a black box how that's delivered through that network down to the device. But with the UDN, because the telco is our partner, we actually see all the data across the telco or provider network, and we share all that back to the content provider. So the content provider can see congestion in mobile networks, fixed line networks, and can have choices as to how they manage that. In addition, advertising on the analytics, if you think about it today, and certainly in the mobile world, sort of Facebook owns that market from an advertising perspective because they have the breadth and depth. But actually, if you look at bringing all the global telcos together, they own all those subscribers, hundreds of millions of subscribers on a global basis, and they're willing to share all that data back to the content owners and distributors. So another part of our analytics that we share back. Then we have other value-added services like pre-positioning, RAN congestion management, a bunch of technologies that all these telcos use internally for themselves. But now, because they're part of the CDN, they expose that to all the content owners and distributors. The goal here is to increase revenue for the telcos, increase QoS performance for the content owners and distributors so they can increase their revenue, and create a sort of open environment where all the data is shared and you're thinking about what new services to launch on this high-performance network. In addition, it's probably 20% lower cost because of the way the economics work out. And I only talk about the UDN first because as we went to go launch the UDN, and we're launching it in APAC in Europe first, and I think we go actually live in APAC in August, in Europe in September. But as we went to go do that, we had this huge question of what can you do to help me around virtual reality? Right? It's not just the encoding, because there's all types of different encoding you have to do, different bit rates. It's also the delivery of all that content, right, onto different platforms, different environments, and it makes it pretty complicated. So if you step back and just look at the encoding side of the business, right, a lot of people have worked really hard and done a good job on it, but it's getting more complicated. Right? The rates are going up, the data is significantly increased, HDR is coming online. It takes longer, and if you want to get to virtual reality and live encoding, right, it's a pretty big problem to solve as you go forward. And today, actually, the market's done a pretty good job of parallel encoding, right? Breaking the content up into multiple chunks, putting it across multiple sort of EC2 servers, if you will, connecting into Amazon S3, sort of the standard way to go do it, and chunk it all up and go deliver against today. But as those volumes expand exponentially, we think there's a problem with that. You can't sort of get to the live encoding that you want to go do, the live encoding that you want to get to with really once virtual reality launches and sort of heads towards mainstream. So we think the way to do that is to not force the encoding into sort of forced sizes of sort of instances, but rather to say what type of capability do you need for the actual encoding you're going to do. In other words, have the flexibility to say, I need this many CPUs, this much RAM, this much horsepower to go do it, and to have a back end that can connect all of that technology together so that you can do it more in real time. So what Ericsson's done on the back end of our UDN is we use rack scale technology with an optical backplane. You can add sort of as much CPU memory, storage, GPUs, accelerators as you need, and you're not chopping that up into multiple bit sizes to go do it. So when you think about some of the issues of chopping it up, so you have to take that piece of content and fit it into all the exact memory sizes, right? And you're always going back and forth what sizes work, and there's a bunch of overhead associated with that. But if you can go back to single line encoding and you just bring all the assets you need to go do the work, you can actually speed it up by quite a bit. And the optical backplane that we're using can go at 2.4 terabits per second on the backplane. So this is sort of one of the features of UDN that we're rolling out, our ingest capability and then what we can do at the origin of that. And we think that's key. So again, it's about optimizing the hardware for your workflow, not trying to cut your workflow up to fit in the available hardware, sort of spinning it on its head, if you will. So for us, we think you have to go do that because ultimately consumers are going to want this delivery capability. And they're going to want higher and higher bit rates, right, as you go from standard HD to HDR to 360, all the way through the sort of growth cycle of virtual reality. So the next piece that happens is how do you push all this content out, right? Because you only have so much capability. And for us, it's, look, it's not that we're going to go build out with UDN all the edge capability at all. We're going to go to all the telcos who own all the content, who own all the subscribers today, and say, look, you have to build out your edge anyways to handle the content. Just put more and more servers. We share the revenue so that you can pay for the growth of that delivery around virtual reality. You can pay for the size and performance that you're going to need as you go do that. Today on the telco side, in Asia alone, I think we have 14 of the largest telcos signed up. So think about guys like Singtel, Hutchison, SoftBank, Telstra, China Telecom, China Mobile, and now add another 7 guys there. By the end of this year, we'll actually have over 40 telcos in APAC alone signed on, providing the performance and capability for this type of delivery. Today on the content side, we've sort of just worked with early adopters, so we have about 25 content owners and distributors using this network. We sort of have put a team of about 150 people that are rolling this in APAC, and then we're duplicating that team into Europe. So back to the VR, we have what we call our ingest, which is for VR, how do you take a single file, how do you manage that to all the multiple encodings you have to do, multiple bit rates, the multiple platforms, because not even a single platform that you're going to go against, right? It's multiple platforms. And how do we create all those different streams, and how do we manage it for the customer and then do the delivery? So 2 of our early adopter customers are Paramount and Fox, and Vubiquity. And each of them have the same issue around virtual reality. I already have enough management. I can't have this plethora of growth around virtual reality while I have to figure out how to go do all these files, and then I have to go do all the delivery. I want someone else with the ingest that can go handle all that. So that's the point of our origin and down to the edge delivery server. So the goal is to get to just-in-time virtual reality. How do you go deliver that? How do you take one copy in? How do you make the multiple copies out? We're starting in the US with the 3 people I just told you. We're starting trials with them a month from now with this back end. And the goal is to have this ready to launch by the end of this year. So obviously, virtual reality in real volume, I don't know if it starts the middle of next year, the end of next year. There's a growth curve to it, and it's going to take some time. But the question is, how do you get ready? How do you enable it? How do you see the path forward to go do it? And that's sort of one of our value-added services we're pushing down on the UDN. Questions? Yep. Yeah, we actually provide the software to the telcos, and they buy all the hardware, and they build out their edge. And actually, the way our model works is, if a traditional CDN charged sort of $1 for a bundle of content, whatever that bundle was for delivery, our model is roughly we charge about 80 cents for that same bundle of delivery. Our expectation is that we will give you 3 to 5 times the performance of delivery against that. That will give you analytics that you've never had, obviously, because the telco shares all that information with us. And then we deliver it. Of that 80 cents that we then collect from the traditional bundle, the dollar bundle, we actually share 40 cents of that with the telco. So it's a 50-50 rev share with our model. To give you a sense, traditional CDNs, if they collect $1 from a content owner, they share about 2 cents of that dollar with the telco. So it's sort of a 20 times increase in revenue for the service provider in this model with us. So they're highly incentivized to create the performance, create the connection, and then the next piece for us is, what are the value-added services you add on top of that? So traditional CDNs, right, they don't have the working relationship with the telco because they're not really sharing any revenue. But just the way I talked about, VR is one of our first value-added services. Another example is we are launching our advertising value-added service. And we're running 3 trials today. So in those 3 trials, what we're doing is we're literally taking the content information from the subscribers from telco. Right? They know who you are, how much you spend a month, all the websites you look at, where you travel, how many people in your family. They anonymize all that information, and they're willing to feed it back in to all the people doing the streaming of that content, all the owners. So in the 3 different tests, we're doing one in Europe, one in APAC, and one in, Southeast Asia. And in those models, they've seen a 3 to 5x pickup in the rates per advertising, whether it's CPM or per video in that. So that's another example of a value add. We have another value add service where literally pre-positioning of content and toll-free data. So a lot of content owners want to deliver content, but if the subscribers watch it or use it, interact with it, they want to pay for the data on the mobile networks for that subscriber. So the telcos all of that capability today, right? But CDNs don't traditionally have that because they're not connected. But we have that connection, so the telcos provide the ability to do that back into the CDN. So, other questions? Yeah.
So for the people who doesn't have the ISP provided by the telco you have partnered with, do you still serving that section of the customer?
Yeah, we do. We actually build a base overlay across all regions with our hardware. So we can deliver if we don't have a service provider. As you can imagine, we're going to launch, as I said, in August. And in APAC by then, we'll probably have 20 telcos live. And if you were to go look at all the subscribers I just talked about, even from the ones I already mentioned, that's a greater sort of reach than any CDN in APAC, right? I mean, think of China Telecom, right? China Mobile. You just hit like 80% of China just with those 2 guys alone. Singtel, Telstra, Hutchison, and then we have all the equally as important, but smaller operators through Southeast Asia and APAC, right? So we deliver across APAC, but if we don't have an operator in a specific region or a specific subscriber, we do deliver from our back end. But when you do that, you don't get the same performance boost as literally having the telco be the edge, right? Because they're putting it right near the subscriber. So, yeah.
What type of connectivity do you have between the content provider and those telcos? Do you have some type of sharing arrangement before deploying the UDM?
Yeah, so we ingest wherever you happen to be, and we obviously have high-speed connections directly into all the telcos, right? So we connect directly to every telco. We don't sort of, use Telstra to get to Hutchison to get to.
So you have direct there.
We have direct, and you need to have that, otherwise you can't get the performance, right? So, other questions? Hi, if anyone has any questions, it's actually Robert Ruzicka at Ericsson.com, and happy to talk to anyone. Thank you very much for the time.